What lenses should you buy? And can you get away with buying more budget-friendly ones? In this video, I want to talk to you about the different focal lengths that I use, why you want to use those, and the budget, much cheaper versions of these more expensive ones. So what's the first lens I recommend? A 24mm f1.4. Now, when you start out, you are going to be drawn to prime lenses for that constant wow factor of the bokeh that they offer, and also the low light abilities. The 24mm prime is probably my favorite prime lens. It's wide, it's great for filming people. There's also not a lot of distortion when you get closer to the lens, and it is a great gimbal lens in general. Anything with buildings, events, dock work. Now, the one we're shooting on right now is the 24mm G Master. It's a stunning lens, but it's $1,300. How about new? What is a more budget-friendly alternative that will get you similar results for a lot less money? Well, there's actually a few options that you can pick from. The Sigma 24mm f1.4, it's been out a little while. You also have the Sony 24mm f2.8. You're going to sacrifice some of that depth, some of that bokeh, but also the Samyang at 440 24mm f1.4 with autofocus. But my pick would be the Viltrox 24mm f1.8. I've tested that lens. I compared it to the 24mm f1.4 G Master. It was a lot closer than you would think. The autofocus performance was stellar. I was genuinely impressed by its performance for its cost, which is right now $379 US. That's a huge discount. We're talking a quarter, roughly a quarter of the price. But what is the next lens you might potentially need in your bag? You need a zoom lens. 7200 is that white lens you see at weddings, at events, basically anything with people, lots of sports as well. There's going to come a point in your career, photo or video, where you realize you need this lens because of its reach.
I see what you did there.
You can't be stood up close. You need to be standing at the back for certain things and still being able to get a usable shot. You might want to get more candid style shots where people don't really know you're filming and it looks more natural. A 7200 is very important for this. Now, the most expensive one out there is the Sony 7200 f2.8 GM. It's $2,800. Now, the one I actually use is the 7200 f4, which is actually half the price of that. But there are more budget-friendly alternative options out there. 7200 f4, which I was shooting on right there, which I use, is a great option. Probably one of the best, if I'm honest. Fantastic image quality, amazing autofocus. But I do understand that sometimes $1,348 is still a bit too much. There is a cheaper alternative. You have the Tamron 28-200 f2.8 to 5.6. This is a variable aperture lens. It's very well reviewed, but because it's variable aperture, it means the more you zoom in, the aperture is going to go from 2.8 higher and higher. So essentially, when you're at 200mm, you're not going to be at f2.8 where it starts. You're going to be at f5.6. This might be an issue for you. But the good news is there's some other options. So if you're looking for the absolute cheapest zoomy lens out there, this one, the Tamron 70-180 f2.8. All the way from 70 to 180 mils, it stays at a constant f2.8. Again, very, very well reviewed. We're talking 5 stars, 142 reviews on B&H. That's what I would go with if you're looking for the most budget zoomy lens out there. So what's the next lens you might be looking for? How about a super wide, but with a bit of zoom on there as well? Now, 1635 is key for many things, to make things look larger than life. That's really useful for things like real estate. Also for shooting landscape, but also for converting wide shots to vertical shots for TikTok, for Reels, all that kind of thing. Maybe you want to go Emmanuel Lubezki. He shoots super wide to show his characters in their environments all as one shot. Wide lenses can really change the perspective of things as well. They can help increase the look of speed, make movement look smoother as they're wider. The Sony 1635 f2.8 is $2,198, but you don't need that. I use the 1635 f4, which is $1,000 less, but there actually is more budget alternative options as well. Now, I believe this 1635 f4 that I use is the best value one out there right now. I made a whole video about that a few weeks ago. Probably check out that one, especially on the fact that you can get it used. Right now, there's one for $797 on B&H. That's probably going to go before this video even goes live. When there are newer versions of lenses out, like the brand new 1635 f4 Power Zoom from Sony, it puts down the old lens's price, especially in the used market. So that's a good one to look for. A lot of people are also going to ask and question about the Tamron, the 1728, coming in at $899. Constant f2.8 aperture if you do need that extra depth of field, if you need the extra bokeh, the low light abilities. Not a bad option. I didn't love it personally. That one right there, that would be my pick, the 1635 f4 from Sony. Buy it used, it's a better deal. Hello. Just interrupting my own video. So my job is to make videos for you, and I'm able to do that partly through support from sponsors. More and more people are wanting to get rid of their regular jobs, their 9-to-5s, and start working for themselves. But you can't just do that. You gotta have a path that allows you to do that. And today's sponsor is Skillshare, which really will start you on the right track to be able to do something like that. We all learn now from watching videos online, and Skillshare is literally thousands and thousands of classes that you can take at your own convenience on your phone, on your computer, whenever you want to, whenever you have the free time to do so. There's literally a class on there for everything, but I'm obviously very passionate about YouTube. And if you've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel, it's not too late, no matter what anybody says. That is the nature of the world today. Everyone is interested in consuming content, and you have something other people probably want to know about. So you should start a YouTube channel on it. And if you don't know how to do that, MKBHD, Marques Brownlee, I know you know who he is. He has a masterclass, literally start to finish, on how to make YouTube videos. He gives you so much information that you just wouldn't have thought of, things that you have no idea that play a big part in how successful your YouTube videos are. Things like how important a hook is to draw viewers in very quickly to make them want to watch more of the video. If you've been looking at starting a YouTube channel for a while, just start with that one. It's the best one out there by far. Best part about this is you can take it completely free. If you click on the link down below, you'll get your first month of Skillshare, zero cost to you, nothing. Click that link, you're good to go. The longer you wait, the longer it's not going to happen. Live a life you want to live. I do it. You can do it too. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring today's video. What's the next lens you might be looking at? Another prime lens. Now, some prefer the look of a 35. I personally like the look of a 50. You've heard the term nifty 50. This is that lens. This is, again, a lens for people. You've got the bokeh, you've got the compression at 50, and now the depth too. I actually love this look for weddings, for events, talking head videos, interviews, and especially while it's wide open like we have it right now at f1.2. It's got a dreamy look about it. It's beautiful. It's much more intimate. There's more of the subject, less of the background. People will look at what you create with this lens and go, wow, you must have a really expensive camera.
That's true. That is true.
That's what this lens does. Now, the one we're using right now is the 50mm f1.2 G Master. It costs around $1,800 US, but you don't need to spend anything near that much to get something with very similar results. Now, the 50mm focal length is where you can really get the best bang for your buck. This one right here is the 50mm f1.8. Now, I've done a whole video about this lens, which I'll link up here. If you have one of Sony's newer bodies, with this lens, it's going to perform very well for how much it costs, which is $248 new, or you can get it used for $202 right now. On your local ads, you can probably find it for even cheaper. Now, if you're thinking, it's okay, I don't want to really go with something like that, there is another option which bridges the gap between that and the 50mm f1.2 G Master. This one right here is the 55mm f1.8 Zeiss. It is a magical lens that I had for probably about 3 years. Ridiculously sharp, tiny little lens. It's a little bit dated now, but it still can hold its own if you want something a little bit better than the 50mm f1.8. You still want that 50mm look because it's only 55mm. About 1,000 new right now, but there's a used one on B&H, albeit a 7 out of 10, but it's $498. That is a complete bargain for the 55mm f1.8. Now, there are things to bear in mind when it comes to using budget glass versus more higher end stuff. It's very possible in most situations that a lot of these lenses aren't going to be as sharp as some of the more expensive ones. Remember though, that sharpness isn't always a good thing. You don't always want things to be tack sharp, especially if you're shooting video. Lens perfections very likely are going to be worse in some of these lenses as well. When we're talking about imperfections, we're talking about things like chromatic aberration, color fringing, where in contrasty environments, you'll likely see pink or purple bits around the edges of certain things. That's likely to happen in cheaper lenses, unlikely to happen in more expensive glass. Again, you pay for what you get. Build quality is also going to be something that you should be aware of, and I would encourage you to look at depending on how you're going to be using these lenses. When I say build quality, that factors in things like weather resistance. If you know you're going to be shooting in harsh weather environments, it's going to be rainy, it's going to be snowy, it's going to be very humid, chances are you probably need weather sealing on the lenses, and some of these budget versions might not be good for you. Now, a big thing that we're starting to see more and more of, especially on Sony glass, is the features that these lenses have. You don't get a lot of these features on the budget versions. We're starting to see aperture rings on budget versions. You don't get a lot of buttons that you can customize. You might not get autofocus, manual focus switches. You might not get an aperture lock, and you might not get a declicked aperture. Those are things that are very common on Sony GM lenses now. Those aren't necessarily things you might need, but as you start to use your gear more and more, you might identify, I actually do need to be able to have a declicked aperture. So it's all things to think about. I'd encourage you to do your own research if you're interested in purchasing any budget versions of these lenses. This is just a guide for you to show the other options that are out there. Maybe after watching this video, you've realized, actually, I just want to kind of get an all-in-one, in which case, the Sigma or the Sony 24-70, I'll put that video up there, compares both the lenses. That might be a good one to check out. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.